The Senate will come to order. Good morning, everybody. I was worried about the Rules Chairman. He was normally one of the first members in here. This time I would ask that all unauthorized persons exit the chamber. Oh, you're authorized. You're staying, all right. Chair would like to recognize his good friend, the well-dressed, the not-so-timely Senator from the 53rd.
Mr. President, thank you. I'm a little out of breath. I had to walk the steps. That's unlike me. Well, it's a rainy day in Georgia, but the sun's coming out, and I know the people in this chamber are going to make Georgia even better. Today is National Sleep Awareness Week. I think I'll take a nap on that one. And I'm not going to say anything else except the journal's been read and found to be correct. All I got to say.
The chair would suggest you don't run up the stairs. I
need some oxygen.
Extremely disoriented right now. Is there objection to dispensing with the reading of the journal? The chair hears none. The reading of the journal is dispensed with. Is there objection to the confirmation of the journal? The chair hears none, and the journal is confirmed. All senators who have bills or resolutions, please bring them to the Secretary's desk at this time. Mr. Secretary, first reading of Senate bills and resolutions, please.
Senate Bill 300 by Senator Hickman of the 4th, a bill to be entitled an act to amend an act creating a Board of Commissioners for Tattnall County, approved August 18, 1927, as amended particularly by an act approved April 25, 2002.
State and local government.
Senate Bill 301 by Senator Dugan of the 30th, a bill to be entitled an act to authorize the City of Kelton, Georgia, to exercise all redevelopment and other powers under Article 9, Section 2,
State
Paragraph
and local
7B.
government.
That completes the order, Mr. President.
Ms. Secretary, first reading of House bills and resolutions, please.
House Bill 703 by Representative Mathis of the 144th, a bill to be entitled an act to provide that future elections for the office of probate judge of Bleckley County shall be
State and local government.
House Bill 704 by Representative Mathis of the 144th, a bill to be entitled an act to provide that future elections for the office of chief judge of the magistrate court of Bleckley
State and
County.
local government.
That completes the order, Mr. President.
Ms. Secretary, will you please read reports of standing committees?
Mr. President, the Senate Committee on Economic Development and Tourism has had under consideration the following legislation and has instructed me to report the same back to the Senate with the following recommendation. House Bill 342, due pass by substitute, respectfully submitted Senator Thompson of the 14th District Chair. Mr. President, the Senate Committee on Education and Youth has had under consideration the following legislation and has instructed me to report the same back to the Senate with the following recommendation. That House Bill 287, due pass by substitute, respectfully submitted Senator Payne of the 54th District Chair. Mr. President, the Senate Committee on Finance has had under consideration the following legislation, has instructed me to report the same back to the Senate with the following recommendation. House Bill 451, due pass by substitute. House Bill 611, due pass by substitute. House Bill 498, due pass. House Bill 282, due pass by substitute. Respectfully submitted, Senator Huffsettler of the 52nd District Chair. Mr. President, the Senate Committee on Health and Human Services has had under consideration the following legislation and has instructed me to report the same back to the Senate with the following recommendation. House Bill 141, due pass by substitute, and House Bill 307, due pass by substitute. Respectfully submitted, Senator Watson of the 1st District Chair. Mr. President, the Senate Committee on Judiciary has had under consideration the following legislation and has instructed me to report the same back to the Senate with the following recommendation. House Bill 371, due pass by substitute. House Bill 562, due pass by substitute. House Bill 534, due pass. House Bill 479, due pass. Respectfully submitted, Senator Strickland of the 17th District Chair. Mr. President, the Senate Committee on Natural Resources and the Environment has had under consideration the following legislation and has instructed me to report the same back to the Senate with the following recommendation. House Resolution 183, due pass. Respectfully submitted, Senator McNeil of the 3rd District Chair. Mr. President, the Senate Committee on Retirement has had under consideration the following legislation and has instructed me to report the same back to the Senate with the following recommendation. House Bill 173, due pass. Respectfully submitted, Senator Robertson of the 29th District Chair. Mr. President, the Senate Committee on Rules has had under consideration the following legislation, has instructed me to report the same back to the Senate with the following recommendation. Senate Resolution 190, due pass. Senate Resolution 201, due pass. Respectfully submitted, Senator Mullis of the 53rd District Chair. Mr. President, the Senate Committee on State and Local Government Operations has had under consideration the following legislation, has instructed me to report the same back to the Senate with the following recommendation. House Bill 682, do pass. House Bill 683, do pass. House Bill 685, do pass. Senate Bill 286, do pass. Senate Bill 292, do pass. Senate Bill 293, do pass. Senate Bill 295, do pass. Senate Bill 296, do pass. Respectfully submitted, Senator Anderson of the 24th District Chair. That completes the order, Mr. President.
Ms. Secretary, will you please read bills and resolutions for the second time?
House Bill 43 by Representative Cantrell, the 22nd, and others. Motor vehicles require registration application forms to include optional information regarding certain conditions which may interfere with the registrant's ability to communicate. House Bill 97 by Representative Leverett of the 33rd and others. Courts, oath for certain clerks of the probate court, require and provide. House Bill 146 by Representative Gaines of the 117th and others. Public officers and employees, paid parental leave for eligible state employees and eligible local Board of Education employees provide. House Bill 154 by Representative Reeves of the 34th and others. Domestic relations, protection of children, strengthen, clarify, and update provisions. House Bill 205 by Representative Williams, 148th and others. Insurance, framework for regulating offering or issuance of travel insurance provide. House Bill 241 by Representative Gamble of the 15th and others. Insurance, revised meaning of property insurance, change parameters under which certain contracts or agreements may be canceled. House Bill 258 by Representative Saints of the 180 and others. Crimes and offenses, response to state versus Williams, 2020 Georgia, Lexus 85 provisions. House Bill 316 by Representative Steffens of the 164th and others. Pharmacies, increase pharmacist to pharmacy technician ratio for providing direct supervision at any time. House Bill 346 by Representative Laricki of the 169th. Jerome's Act, enact. House Bill 354 by Representative Williams of the 145th and others. State Board of Cemeterians and Funeral Service report suspected unlawful activity to the Sheriff's Office and the Attorney General require. House Bill 370 by Representative Jones of the 47th and others. Health, term limits for members of joint hospital authorities provide. House Bill 392 by Representative Ridley of the 6th and others. Alcoholic beverages, licenses for retail sale packages of alcoholic beverages for consumption off premises shall be subject to regulation as to distance from schools as determined by the local governing authority provide. House Bill 470 by Representative Washburn of the 141st and others. Property, no plans are required when units are not designated by physical structures provide. House Bill 509 by Representative Gaines, the 117th and others. Insurance requires certain insurers to make at least one reasonably priced comprehensive major medical health insurance policy available. House Bill 548 by Representative Dempsey of the 13th and others. Social services, reasonable access to records concerning reports of child abuse to the Administrative Office of Courts provide. House Bill 553 by Representative Gunter of the 8th and others. State government, participation in hearings by electronic communications provide. House Bill 567 by Representative Cooper of the 43rd and others. Newborn Screening and Genetics Advisory Committee, create. House Bill 631 by Representative Chokas of the 138th and others. Georgia Crime and Information Center, develop a system to collect information on an individual's ability to communicate with law enforcement or emergency responders, provisions. That completes the order, Mr. President.
All right, it's now time for our morning roll call. Are there any motions to excuse? Chair recognizes the senator from the 33rd.
Thank you, Mr. President, and good morning, y'all. I ask for unanimous consent to excuse the senator from the 35th, the 38th, and 37th for business inside the Capitol.
Without objection, the senators from the 35th, 38th, and 37th are excused. The chair recognizes the senator from the 4th.
Mr. President, a unanimous consent to excuse the senator from the 3rd.
Without objection, the senator from the 3rd is excused. Are there any additional motions to excuse? Chair sees none. The secretary will call the roll. Senators, signify your presence by voting the yea switch. The secretary will unlock the machine. Have all senators voted their attendance? Give it another minute here. Not really a minute, kind of a minute. Have all senators voted your attendance? Hallway clear. Mr. Secretary, please close the machine. It's now time for a morning devotional, and I ask that all senators, take your seats and cease all audible conversations. Doorkeepers, please secure the chamber at this time. I'd like to recognize the senator from the 14th to lead us in our Pledge of Allegiance and to introduce to us our chaplain of the day.
Thank you, Mr. President. If you'll join me in honoring our flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. And now our Georgia flag. I pledge allegiance to the Georgia flag and to the principles for which it stands, wisdom, justice, and moderation. Good morning, senators and colleagues. Many of us have heard stories from the Bible depicting an impossible situation that was made possible. Most of the stories include an underdog or someone that had very little influence, but God chose to do something miraculous in their lives. In other words, each of us matter. And as the Bible teaches in Jeremiah 29:11, "For I know the plans I have for you, declares the Lord, plans to prosper you and not harm you, and plans to give you hope and a future." The story of my friend Kelvin Cochran begins in 1981 as a 21-year-old firefighter in Shreveport, Louisiana. Handsome. As we would call in our world, he was a player. The women liked him. The Lord grabbed his attention and impressed on him to find a wife, though. So he began thinking and praying about who that might be. Who was going to be his bride? He remembered back to his 4th grade and a certain gal named Carolyn Marshall. So he began calling everyone in the phone book with the last name Marshall until he finally located her. She was living with her mom in public housing, and after a little persuasion, convinced her to allow him to come and meet. It was that very night, over hot chocolate, no diamond ring, just a promise that he would love her unconditionally for the rest of her life, that she agreed to marry him. And 6 years later, and now I believe close to 40 years of marriage, they continue to celebrate together. So who is Kelvin Cochran? He gave his life to Christ at the age of 7 and dreamed of being a fireman his entire life. He didn't grow up rich or privileged, but rather a simple life that allowed him to rise through the ranks until being appointed the fire chief at Shreveport in 1999. And then in 2008, Mayor Shirley Franklin appointed him fire chief of the Atlanta Fire Rescue Department. And in 2009, former President Barack Obama appointed him to head the United States Fire Administration in the Department of Homeland Security. The following year, 2010, former Mayor Kasim Reed recruited him back to be the Atlanta Fire Chief. All that to be said, in 2014, though, my friend made headlines across the nation and internationally when he was suspended for 30 days without pay over a book he self-published. Mind you, he asked permission to lead his Bible study and give away his books, but he was asked to resign. Once he was asked to take a 30-day leave and then either resign or be terminated upon his return. But as many of you know, that led to a national outcry for religious liberty and First Amendment rights and protections, and the investigation eventually cleared him. The courts ruled in 2017 that some of the policies that led to his termination were unconstitutional and eventually awarded Kelvin and his family a settlement. Why do I mention this? Because each of us were called to be the voice for the unheard. And whether you're an ordinary boy that grows up to be a decorated fireman or you're an elected official, our constituents and the people we serve rely on us to be that voice. Ladies and gentlemen, please join my dear friend and Chief Operating Officer from Elizabeth Baptist Church, Kelvin Cochran.
Thank you to my friend and brother, the Honorable Senator Bruce Thompson. I want to start by recognizing Governor Brian Kemp, our Lieutenant Governor Jeff Duncan, and you, the honorable women and men of the Georgia Senate. I want to share a brief devotional on the theme, our calling to fulfill. Romans 8:28 through 29 has these words, and we know that all things work together for good to they who love God, to those who are the called according to his purpose. For whom he did foreknow, he also predestined to be conformed to the image of his Son, that he might be the firstborn of many brothers and sisters. In this passage of Scripture, there are clearly implications to the Christian faith. However, there are also significant implications for people of all faiths. The three most common questions in our quest for a meaningful life that leaves a legacy of faith and righteousness are, number one, what did God create me to do? Number two, what did God create me to be? And the third question is, does God have a plan for my life? The answers to my brothers and sisters here in the Senate, the answers to those questions are really represented in three words in that passage of Scripture: called, purpose, and predestined. Calling is what God created us to do. Purpose is what God created us to be. And the word predestined, listen, confirms God has a plan for our life, and fulfilling God's plan for our life is our destiny. In many instances, the word purpose is used synonymous to destiny, and it's used synonymous to calling. But when the word purposes is used, it is referring to all three: calling, purpose, and destiny. In Acts chapter 13, verse 36, it provides a scriptural application. This is what it says: and David fulfilled all the purposes of God in his life, then he died. Here's the big idea behind this devotional. To fulfill our calling, we must be faithful to God's plan and faithful to God's purpose. The one point in this devotional is calling is what God created us to do. For people of faith, just as a career in the military is a calling, just as a career in law enforcement is a calling, and just as a career in the fire and rescue services is a calling, a career as an elected official is a calling. Some of us became aware of our calling when we were little kids. Some of us realized our calling when we were going through a difficult season in our life, while others of us realized our calling while advocating for a cause in our community. Because our calling is from God, it is a divine assignment. And because calling is a divine assignment, listen to this, the called are supposed to be able to do things that those who are not called are not supposed to be able to do. There should be a distinction between those of us who are the called and those of us who are not called. Philippians 2:13 says, it is God at work in us, both to will and to do according to his good pleasure. To fulfill our calling, we must always be mindful that our vocation is a divine assignment from him. Calling is what we were created to do for his glory. Calling is not what you're doing for God. Calling is what God has chosen you to do through you. God called military and public safety officers because he knew there would be wars and crimes and fires. So he chose a select group of sons and daughters to serve as soldiers and law enforcement officers and firefighters to do what he would do if he was a soldier, if he was a law enforcement officer, or if he was a firefighter. So he chose them to be deliverers of promises that he made to protect, to rescue, to save, to bring back to life, and to bring chaos back to order. Likewise, my brothers and sisters in the Senate, God also called elected officials because he knew, listen to this, there would be a need for laws and ordinances and standards that would be necessary to provide for a more perfect union, to establish justice, to ensure domestic tranquility, to provide for the common defense, to promote the general welfare, and to secure the blessings of liberty to ourselves and our posterity. Here's the bottom line. God wants to use us in our callings to serve in such a manner that we set a standard for everyone who will serve in our office after he has given us another divine assignment. Let us pray. Dear God, our Father, we praise you and thank you that you have blessed us to see another day. We are alive and doing well. And we thank you that you've blessed us to be citizens of the United States of America, the land of the free and the home of the brave, and citizens of the great state of Georgia, the Peach State. And we thank you that you have a divine assignment on our lives to fulfill your glory on earth. So, dear God, our Father, we ask that your mercies and your grace would guide us in doing what you sent us here to do. But also, Father, we pause to ask your grace and comfort over those who have lost loved ones in the horrific shootings in our state, the Georgians who lost their lives, and the family members who need your comfort. We pray your continued blessing on those who've lost family members due to COVID-19 and those who are sick. Guide and lead our president and our governor and our senators and representatives to do what is pleasing in your sight. We end this prayer according to our own faiths and our own beliefs. And according to my faith, I end it in the name of Jesus. Amen.
Senate will come back to order. Are there any unanimous consents? The chair sees none. Does any senator wish to rise on a point of personal privilege? The chair recognizes the senator from the 48th for a point of personal privilege.
Vanna White. I'll just put this here. You're supposed to hold it. Yeah, he was going to be like. All right. Thank you, Mr. President. The senator from the 5th. Shake. Can you get him? Oh, no.
Just make sure he stays out of the well.
Okay. Here, I'll have you stand here. So I think during times of great difficulty, when faced with tragedy culminating in a senseless loss of life, it's easy to focus on the darkness in an attempt to understand how or why. But today, I rise to look towards the light, and I rise today to look for the helpers. So I look to our vibrant Asian American Pacific Islander community here in Georgia and the civic leaders that give me such incredible hope for the future. So today I would like to present Senate Resolution 258 to They See Blue Georgia, a progressive advocacy and organizing group, which aims to educate South Asian voters about civic engagement and voting in Georgia. This organization was founded in 2019, and in the past year and a half, it's grown its original membership to just about 400 people, up from a dozen. That's incredible. I said from this spot on Monday that the key to social change is participation, especially when you feel that voices like yours aren't always heard. They See Blue's mission has been grounded precisely in that ethos, which is the uplift and empowerment of AAPI voters and voices, showing the entire state of Georgia that we have a key role in the very process which makes America great. There is no one way to be an American, a country founded, built, and sustained by immigrants. And They See Blue's approach not only acknowledges but celebrates the melding of disparate cultures, languages, and experiences that make our communities stronger. In 2020, They See Blue's Postcards and Pacoras team wrote a total of 12,000 postcards for Democratic candidates. For the runoff election, their canvassing team knocked on the doors of 1,000 Asian American voters in Cobb, Fulton, Forsyth, and Gwinnett counties. Digits, their phone banking team, made thousands of calls to South Asian voters in English and the South Asian languages of Gujarati, Punjabi, Telugu, Nepali, and Punjabi. They met voters where they lived and worked, holding rallies and forums with candidates in predominantly South Asian spaces like Patel Brothers Grocery Store in Sewanee, which is my district. For many South Asian Georgians, this was their first experience and opportunity to meet political figures who actively listened and cared about their concerns in spaces that were familiar to them. And their work did not end with the elections. During this legislative session, They See Blue built a legislative affairs team from scratch and has been actively engaging its members in advocacy. I could not be more proud of They See Blue Georgia and its grassroots organizers for their commitment to engaging in the hard work of our democracy and making it accessible to everyone. Thank you, They See Blue. This is for you.
For what purpose does the senator from the 40th rise?
If it's the proper time, Mr. President, I'd like to ask for unanimous consent to excuse the senator from the 26th.
Without objection, the senator from the 26th is excused. Chair recognizes the senator from the 31st for a point of personal privilege.
Thank you, Mr. President. I just want to take a quick minute and wish my 11-year-old daughter, Madison Rose Anna Vitarde, a happy birthday. She's at home because it's Digital Learning Day since the storms never showed up. So she's probably watching. I just want to wish her a happy birthday and tell her I love you. Take care. Thank you, Mr. President.
Well done, Dad. Does any other senator wish to rise on a point of personal privilege? The chair sees none. You have a consent calendar. Chair recognizes the senator from the 36th to introduce the doctor of the day. Thank you for the reminder.
Thank you, Mr. President. Colleagues, good morning on this rainy Thursday. It's my pleasure to introduce to you today Dr. Victor Leslie. Dr. Leslie is double board certified in anesthesiology and pain medicine. He currently treats pain for patients suffering from auto accident injuries and chronic pain. His medical degree was earned at Duke University School of Medicine. He completed his anesthesiology residency at MedStar Georgetown University Hospital and completed a pain medicine fellowship at the University of Maryland Medical Center. Highly trained in his specialty. Beyond medicine, Dr. Leslie's current focus is consolidating the personal injury workers' compensation settlement process. This involves leveraging technology to streamline the experience, which results in increased convenience for patients and reduced administrative costs for insurance companies, attorneys, and medical providers. That is a contribution that we can all applaud, indeed, particularly if you've ever had a family member or constituent caught up in the personal injury workers' compensation settlement process. As an Atlanta native, Dr. Leslie loves the great state of Georgia and has a passion for serving our communities. He volunteers with the United Way of Atlanta and Alpha Pi Alpha Fraternity Incorporated. However, his newest interest and job involves planning a wedding for this upcoming May, saying yes to his fiance's wonderful ideas and doing everything he can to make his future wife happy. I'm sure she's happy that he's with us today. We certainly are. Dr. Leslie, we thank and appreciate you and your estimable contributions. I yield the well.
You have a consent calendar of privilege resolutions before you. Does any senator wish to remove a resolution from the consent calendar? The chair sees none. Is there objection to adoption of the resolutions on the consent calendar? The chair hears none. The resolutions on the consent calendar are adopted. Are there any motions to withdraw and commit? The chair sees none. You have a consent calendar of local bills before you. Mr. Secretary, are there any objections filed to any bills on the local consent calendar?
Mr. President, there is an objection filed to Senate Bill 293.
All right, Senate Bill 293 will be removed from the list. The question will be on the passage of the bills on the local consent calendar. All those in favor will vote yea, opposed nay. The Secretary will unlock the machine. Have all senators voted? Have all senators voted? Hallways clear. We got one more coming. Now we're clear. Mr. Secretary, please close the machine. On the passage of the bills on the local consent calendar, the yeas are 47, the nays are 1, and these bills, having received the requisite constitutional majority, are therefore passed. Mr. Secretary, will you please read the caption to Senate Bill 293, which was pulled off of the local consent calendar?
Senate Bill 293 by Senator Parent of the 42nd and others. Bill to be entitled an act to amend an act to create and establish in DeKalb County, Georgia, districts from which the members of the County Board of Education of DeKalb County shall be elected, approved April 12, 1963, as amended so as to provide conditions upon the expansions of the boundaries of the City of Decatur, independent school systems that are extended by annexation by the City of Decatur, and for other purposes. Mr. President, on March 17, 2021, the state and local government recommends that this bill do pass. Senator Anderson of the 24th District Chair.
Let's go ahead and read the first paragraph.
Mr. President, Senator Parent of the 42nd District offers the following Amendment 1 to amend Senate Bill 293 by inserting after Decatur on line 8 the following to provide for a contingent repeal of provisions by inserting after line 96 of the following. The 7 paragraphs 2 through 6 of the subsection shall stand repealed on July 1st, 2026 if the City of Schools of Decatur's allocation of the City of Decatur school tax does not equal at least 75% of the local share cost of educating those students who enroll due to annexations and cause the number of students enrolled in the City Schools of Decatur to increase by 5% or more from the total enrollment prior to July 1st, 2021, or B, the DeKalb County School System's allocation of the City Schools of Decatur school tax does not equal at least 50% of the taxes it would have received from property annexation of the City of Decatur and for other purposes. That completes the order, Mr. President.
For what purpose does the senator from the 28th rise?
Mr. President, I'd like to ask for unanimous consent to excuse the senator from the 43rd.
Without objection, the senator from the 43rd is excused. The chair recognizes the senator from the 42nd to present Senate Bill 293 and Amendment Number 1.
Thank you, Mr. President. I appreciate the Chamber's indulgence while we got the paperwork ready to add this amendment to Senate Bill 293. We've had the Decatur and DeKalb school systems working out a local compromise over a period of time, and what the amendment will do is just, because the systems obviously were, as with any bill, have intentions underlying it, but want to make sure that those intentions come to fruition. This just adds some circumstances under which these systems could revisit the compromise that they are entering today. And it just got ready this morning, which is why I appreciate the indulgence to amend the bill on the floor. And I'm happy to answer any questions about this legislation.
You have no questions.
Thank you, Mr. President. I ask for favorable consideration of Senate Bill 293 and Amendment Number 1.
All right, does any other senator wish to speak for or against Senate Bill 293? For what purpose does the senator from the 44th rise?
Mr. President, I ask unanimous consent to excuse the senator from the 22nd for business inside the Capitol.
Without objection, the senator from the 22nd is excused. Any other senator wish to speak for or against Senate Bill 293 or the amendment? The chair sees none. All right, we'll take up Amendment Number 1 first. The question is on the adoption of Amendment Number 1 by the senator from the 42nd. Is there objection? The chair hears none, and Amendment Number 1 is adopted. Is there objection to agreeing to the report of the committee which is favorable to the passage of the bill? The chair hears none. The report of the committee is agreed to. Is there objection to the main question being ordered? The chair hears none, and the main question is ordered. Questions on the passage of the bill as amended. All those in favor vote yea. Opposed, nay. The secretary will unlock the machine. Have all senators voted? Have all senators voted? Mr. Secretary, please close the machine. On the passage of the bill, the yeas are 48, the nays are 3. This bill, having received the requisite constitutional majority, is therefore passed as amended. Chair recognizes the majority leader for a motion.
Mr. President, I move that the following bills be engrossed. HB 511, HB 593, HB 114, HB 271, HB 292, and HB 374.
These are all finance bills. Is there objection? There is objection. Would the majority leader like to speak? Would the minority leader like to speak to her objection? She waves. All those in favor of the following bills being engrossed: House Bill 511, House Bill 593, House Bill 114, 271, 292, and House Bill 374. All those in favor of engrossing, vote yea. Opposed, nay. The Secretary will unlock the machine. Have all senators voted? Ms. Secretary, please close the machine. On the motion, the yeas are 32, the nays are 19, and this chamber has engrossed the finance bills on the calendar today. We are now moving on to the rules calendar. Mr. Secretary, will you please read the caption of House Bill 362?
House Bill 362 by Representative Rhodes of the 120th and others. The bill to be entitled An Act to Amend Code Section 12-2-2 of the OCGA relating to the Environmental Protection Division, Environmental Advisory Council, duties of council and its members and director, appeal procedures generally, permit applications and inspections so as to revise an effective date for standards, rules, and regulations. To amend Title 27 of the OCGA relating to game and fish so as to revise as a defined term and for other purposes. Mr. President, the Senate Committee on Natural Resources and the Environment recommends that this bill do pass. Respectfully submitted, Senator McNeil of the 3rd District Chair. That completes the order, Mr. President.
Chair recognizes the senator from Ocilla to present House Bill 362.
Yep, I got it though. Thank you, Mr. President. Ladies and gentlemen of the Senate, House Bill 362 does a couple of things, a few simple things, 5 things to be exact. It codifies the rules and regulations of the department. It adds more species to black bass and trout categories. It adds a new caliber to the primitive weapon category for hunting. It authorizes the Department of Natural Resources to adjust bag limits in the DMAP program that we already have established. And it also allows for the use of minnow traps and minnow seines in the freshwaters, just like they're used in our saltwaters in our state. That's what House Bill 362 does. I'd appreciate your support, and if there are no questions, I'll yield the well.
You have no questions.
Thank you, Mr. President.
Does any other senator wish to speak for or against House Bill 362? The chair sees none. Is there objection to agreeing to the report of the committee which is favorable to the passage of the bill? The chair hears none. The report of the committee is agreed to. Is there objection to the main question being ordered? The chair hears none, and the main question is ordered. Questions on the passage of the bill? All those in favor vote yea. Opposed, nay. The Secretary will unlock the machine. Have all senators voted? Have all senators voted? Hallways clear? Mr. Secretary, please close the machine. On the passage of the bill, the yeas are 49, the nays are 0. This bill, having received the requisite constitutional majority, is therefore passed. Mr. Secretary, can you please read the caption of House Bill 511?
House Bill 511 by Representative Reeves of the 34th and others. Bill to be entitled an act to amend Titles 12, 19, 27, 28, 31, 40, 45, 48, and 49 of the OCGA relating to conservation and natural resources, domestic relations, game and fish, General Assembly, health and motor vehicles, and traffic, public officers and employees, revenue and taxation, and social services, respectively, so as to provide for the establishment or revision of the Georgia Outdoor Stewardship Fund and for other purposes. Mr. President, the Senate Committee on Finance recommends that this bill do pass. Respectfully submitted, Senator Huff-Settler of the 52nd District Chair.
Chair recognizes the senator from the 45th to present House Bill 511.
Thank you, Mr. President. I come to the well today to present House Bill 511. This is a governor's bill that would codify depositing certain fees dedicated for specific purposes by the General Assembly into separate Treasury trust fund accounts through appropriations. In 2019, House Resolution 164 passed, ensuring that dedicated fees are used for the purpose for which the fee was collected, and this must be less than 1% or no more than 1% of the revenue. In this House Bill 164, that resolution, it was a constitutional amendment and was put on the ballot back in November, and it was passed by just over 81%. This bill will establish 9 trust funds, and there's a sunset on this. It'll start in fiscal year 2023 and end in 2033. I'll read a couple of the trust funds that it creates that you'll probably be most familiar with. The Solid Waste Trust Fund, which has to do with the scrap tire fees, the Hazardous Waste Trust Fund, and then it also creates a Transportation Trust Fund dealing with hotel and motel fees, alternative fuel fees, and heavyweight vehicle impact fees. If there are any questions, be happy to answer them. If not, I'll yield the well, Mr. President.
You have no questions.
Thank you.
Does any other senator wish to speak for or against House Bill 511? Chair sees none. Is there objection to agreeing to the report of the committee which is favorable to the passage of the bill? Chair hears none. The report of the committee is agreed to. Is there objection to the main question being ordered? Chair hears none. The main question is ordered. The question on the passage of the bill. All those in favor vote yea. Opposed, nay. The Secretary will unlock the machine. Have all senators voted? Have all senators voted? Ms. Secretary, please close the machine. On the passage of the bill, the yeas are 51, the nays are 0. This bill, having received the requisite constitutional majority, is therefore passed. For what purpose does the senator from the 45th rise?
Thank you, Mr. President. I move that the Senate immediately transmit House Bill 511 to the House.
Senator from the 45th has asked that the Senate immediately transmit House Bill 511 to the House. Is there objection? The chair hears none, and it is immediately transmitted. Mr. Secretary, can you please read the caption of House Bill 593?
House Bill 593 by Representative Blackman of the 146th and others. Bill to be entitled an Act to amend Article 2 of Chapter 7 of Title 48 of the Official Code of Georgia Annotated relating to imposition, rate, computation, and exemptions from state income tax so as to increase the amount of standard deduction from state taxable income for individuals and for other purposes. Mr. President, the Senate Committee on Finance recommends that this bill do pass. Respectfully submitted, Senator Huffstetler of the 52nd District Chair. That completes the order, Mr. President.
Chair recognizes the distinguished senator from the 20th to present House Bill 593.
Thank you, Mr. President. It's a real privilege for me today to get to bring you House Bill 593. It's sponsored and authored in the House by my representative, the esteemed chairman of the House Ways and Means Committee, and my friend. House Bill 593 is a tax cut for hardworking Georgians. And I want to premise a little bit about this before we get into the bill. It's a pretty straightforward bill, but you know, we live in the greatest country in history, and I would contend that we live in the greatest state in the Union. We enjoy the best system of government, a democratic republic, and we benefit from the most dynamic economy in the world based on capitalism and free enterprise. Our nation is founded on the belief in individual liberty, with the power vested in individuals and government authority only stemming from the consent of the governed, and taxation only by the consent of the taxed. So my belief is that the larger government gets and the more tax we pay, the less liberty and freedom, individual freedom we have. So I think it's incumbent upon us as state legislators to be fiscally responsible and to be conservative anytime we ask our citizens to remit their hard-earned dollars to the state treasury. And that's what this bill is about. Back in, I believe it was 2018, we passed a historic tax cut for hardworking Georgians. We lowered the top income tax rate, and we doubled the standard deduction. Because of great leadership in Governor Deal and now Governor Kemp, we've had economic prosperity in Georgia. And I want to commend Governor Kemp and his wisdom and courage for not only protecting our lives, but also our livelihoods and reopening our economy. And our economy is doing better than expected and been incredibly resilient even during this pandemic. I also want to commend our House Finance Committee Chairman, the senator from Georgia's Rome, for the Marketplace Facilitator Bill that we passed last session back in April. And that couldn't have been more timely. And so we've seen state revenues improve during this pandemic and come in better than we expected. But we still, you know, our motto is wisdom, justice, and moderation. So we're a conservative state, and we want to be moderate in what we do with regard to our tax code. We had planned last year to have a more robust, extensive tax reform, but with the pandemic and uncertain economic times, we didn't feel like that was prudent. But we do want to give a break to hardworking Georgians, and that's what this bill does. It increases the standard deduction for head of household filers by $800 from $4,600 to $5,400. For a married couple filing jointly, by $1,100 from $6,000 to $7,100. The increase to the standard deduction will result in a tax savings of $140 million for hardworking Georgians, and it will move Georgia closer to the federal standard deduction. That's what the bill does. I ask for your support as we try to remain the #1 state to do business and be conservative with what we ask of our citizens and what they pay to government. Be happy to answer any questions, Mr. President.
Chair recognizes the Majority Whip for a question.
Will the senator yield?
Yes, sir.
Senator, I just want to commend you on that wonderful speech. You started out, I thought you were going to quote the Declaration of Independence for a moment, but and I love your passion and your enthusiasm for this bill. I just want to thank you for bringing this legislation to us today to cut taxes for hardworking Georgians.
Thank you, Senator. You've been a true inspiration to me, and I appreciate it.
I'm not sure if you meant that or not. You have no more questions.
All right, I ask for your favorable consideration. Thank you.
Chair recognizes the senator from the 40th to speak to House Bill 593.
Thank you, Mr. President, members of the Senate. I rise to speak against House Bill 593. As much as I'd love to put $60 or $100 into the pocket of every Georgian, I just can't. And there are several reasons for that. One, if you think this bill is solely targeted at working Georgians because it deals with the standard deduction, the 2017 tax reform changed the deduction so that many more people of very high income levels still take the deduction instead of itemizing. So this bill includes people also of very high incomes who aren't really going to feel an extra $60 or $100 in their pockets. Secondly, there's a better tax reform we can do in order to target tax relief to your hard-working, lower and middle income families, and that's through the Earned Income Tax Credit, which the senator from the 49th has filed and others in this chamber have filed in Senate Bill 58. But that is not the main reason I stand this morning opposed to this bill. The main reason I just can't vote for this bill is because we currently have 7,000 people on our waiting list, disabled people, waiting for community services to live in their community through the NOW and COMP Medicaid waivers. This is due to a court case years ago where it was said that these people should not be institutionalized but should have the right to live in their communities. And this waiting list has been there for decades. It started in the early 2000s when I was here serving in the House and I had little babies, okay? My babies are adults now. And I came back to the Senate and I found out that waiting list was still there. And it broke my heart. Then I started getting the phone calls from families in my district. I know that you have gotten them too. These families who have been waiting as long as 10 years to get off this waiting list. I heard from parents who were concerned because they themselves are aging and are less able to take care of their disabled children. And if they can't get a spot for a Medicaid waiver so their child can live in their community, they're afraid that they won't be able to be taken care of. I got a call from a parent whose child was about to age out of the school system. That would be at age 21. They were still on the waiting list, waiting for services, and she was terrified that her child, who had made so many gains in the public education system, would lose all the gains if they couldn't go be involved and live in the communities which this Medicaid waiver does. And Another parent told me that it costs, if you don't have the help of the Medicaid waiver, then it costs about how much it costs for us to send our kids to college. But instead of 4 years, it's for the rest of that child's life. I cannot stand here and vote for this tax cut when the $120 million that it represents would almost obliterate this waiting list. It would pay for, to my estimation, 6,000 of the 7,000 slots, and it would continue to pay for that year after year after year. Instead, we present a budget that funds 100 slots year after year after year, and that is going to keep the balance of the waiting list at about 7,000 people year after year after year. And that is why I filed Senate Bill 208, which urges this legislature to fund enough spots on the waiting list each year that the waiting list is gone in 5 years. I cannot continue to ignore the 7,000 people who call us every year, and we have to tell them, we can't do anything for you because there are not enough spots. So to me, a vote for House Bill 593 is a vote against people with disabilities. Thank you, Mr. President. I yield the well.
Senator has yielded the well. Chair recognizes the senator from the 42nd to speak to the measure.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'm also rising in opposition to this legislation. We know that this forging ahead with this tax cut at this juncture will jeopardize $140 million in federal funds under the American Rescue Plan, in addition to the $140 million that it will cost the state. And it jeopardizes that same amount, possibly more, next year. As I said yesterday, the American Rescue Plan is a huge opportunity for Georgia. I've been reading some criticism about, well, Georgia isn't being treated fairly in the American Rescue Plan because certain aspects of the formula mean we're getting less money than other states. Unemployment rate may be the source of that controversy. But let me remind everyone that this bill has more in it for Georgia than for almost any other state. There is a huge incentive and a sweetener specifically for Georgia in the American Rescue Plan, and I am speaking of the $1.4 to $2 billion that we will get if we expand Medicaid. That is for us. So there is no, oh, Georgia's getting shafted. No, Georgia is getting all the sweeteners in this legislation, and it's up to us to take advantage of it. I spoke yesterday of other huge opportunities within the American Rescue Plan. Closing all of our still substantial holes in the budget for this fiscal year, putting back in the money for K-12 education, for higher education that still has millions of dollars in proposed cuts in FY22. Rural hospitals, we have had dozens of rural hospitals barely hanging on for 10, 12, 15 years. This money is an opportunity to solve that problem that we have all said for years we need to help solve. We can make a significant step toward doing so by expanding Medicaid and using other funds for rural health care from the American Rescue Plan, the $4.7 billion that we are slated to get. Broadband expansion. We know that our economy is suffering, especially in rural areas, due to lack of connectivity to the internet. The fact remains that you cannot compete in a modern economy without having internet service. It is a huge economic development opportunity for rural Georgia to go ahead and expand broadband the way we know it needs to be done. The American Rescue Plan specifically says broadband expansion is one of those infrastructure projects that the money can be used for. When the kids had to go virtual, we saw yet again that not having internet is just not an option to thriving in modern society in 2021. So I've heard many people, in fact, all members of both chambers talk for years about how we want to, fund education appropriately. We want to help out our rural hospitals and rural healthcare systems. We really want to expand broadband. The senator from the 51st has worked on this issue for years, and now we have the money to do it. So let's not just sit around and complain about the American Rescue Plan. Let's do it. This is so exciting. Another thing is that, if we want to give everyone $60, this is something, of course, that's fabulous. If we want to give everyone $60, I'm not going to complain about that. That's excellent. But there is a better way to do it, as the senator from the 40th pointed out, and that's the legislation that I've filed for a number of years. That would be the Georgia Work Credit. It's also known as an Earned Income Tax Credit. The way the Earned Income Tax Credit is structured, it would help the economy significantly more, because it would give it would target the funds specifically to people who actually really will notice the additional money that we want to give in this legislation and use it right away. So that will enhance our economy far more than the significant number of folks for whom, let's face it, like, oh yeah, great, I get $60. Lots of people aren't going to notice that at all. I gotta be honest with you. It just can be done in a much smarter way for a policy purpose. We still the EITC Georgia Work Credit Bill does still have the issue of the constraints placed by the American Rescue Plan, but it can be restructured as a direct payment. And that's another thing about this legislation. If we really are very intent on giving hardworking Georgians the amount of money that we are talking about in this legislation, $60 or so, a person, but costing the state $140 million a year, which is still significant, we can do that as a direct payment without jeopardizing the $140 million that we would still get. So which is better? Passing a tax cut that jeopardizes, will cost twice as much as we have it slated for over several years, and jeopardizes funding that we have all these things that we've said we want to do for years that we can use it for, or doing it as a direct payment and still getting that money? Which sounds like the smarter, more fiscally prudent, common sense course of action to you? Obviously, it's keeping the money and still giving the people the money. I mean, that just is the smart thing to do. And frankly, not doing that and forging ahead with this legislation strikes me like a teenager jumping up and down, and they just insist on doing what they're going to do because they're mad that their parents told them that they couldn't do it. And that's exactly what this is. Instead of looking at the facts and saying, we're getting all this money, if we do it as a direct payment, we won't have any question that the Georgians will still get the money and we will still get the money, the $140 million. Instead of doing that, we're like a teenager jumping up and down. You can't tell me what to do. I'm going to go ahead and do it. Well, I just want Georgians to know that jeopardizes $140 million in dollars, and that's not good that's not fiscally conservative. That's not good fiscal planning, and therefore I would ask that we behave a little bit more maturely and work with our federal partners and vote no on this legislation and come back with one that appropriately meets the guidelines of the American Rescue Plan, a one-time act that is a response to our once-in-a-century global pandemic. I'm happy to answer any questions, Mr. President, or I'll yield the well.
Chair recognizes the senator from the 36th for a question.
Thank you, Mr. President. Senator Yield.
Yes, I yield to my friend from 36.
Well, I thank you very much for illuminating the issues that surround this bill and linking us with the realities of the American Rescue Act. I would really appreciate if you could outline how the Medicaid, our posture is, we're one of, I think, a dozen states now. Mississippi, is it not true, to the senator in the well, that Mississippi is moving toward, if they've not already adopted the Medicaid expansion? I know that seen progress over in Mississippi. Isn't that the case?
The senator knows of what she speaks.
I think if you could illuminate these points around our current posture with Medicaid.
Yes.
And what is the possibility and the potential for accepting the federal offer to expand our Medicaid? We who have the third highest, is it not true, population of uninsured folks?
That's right,
compared
Senator.
to all the states.
So the situation that we're in is we have declined to expand Medicaid all these years while paying the taxes that the Affordable Care Act put into place, meaning that all of our hardworking Georgian money has gone to insure people in other states for 10 years, leaving $10 billion that could have been used for Georgians or more on the table due to some sort of ideological opposition. And we are talking about uninsured working adults whose jobs do not provide them with health care benefits, who are working, who are hourly wage workers, and whose jobs don't pay them enough to afford it on their own, and they don't get subsidies under the Affordable Care Act because we were all supposed to expand Medicaid, and have not been given any opportunity to become covered because we refuse to expand Medicaid. These are not people, this is not the poorest of the poor. This is not people sitting around demanding a handout. These are working, childless adults working at many of our big businesses who are not offering the wages or the type of benefits that would enable these folks to achieve health care. So we have 500,000 uninsured Georgians, and we have for all these years. And now, as the senator from the 36 pointed out, states all around us, Republican-led states all around us have realized this makes no sense. This makes no sense. So had we done it early on, we would have had the first 3 years covered of the state portion. Well, we missed that opportunity. But good news. Our senators in Washington worked very hard to get these incentives built into the American Rescue Plan, by which Georgia will get almost $2 billion, covering the state's portion. It bumps up the FMAP match, is what it does. It bumps up the federal government's FMAP match for Medicaid so that we will get up to $2 billion, covering our, excusing all of our neglect in expanding Medicaid for the last 10 years, and saying, we still love you. Go ahead and do it. We still want to take care of Georgians. That's what they're saying from DC. Go ahead and do it. We'll cover it for up to 9 years. And we're like, no, we're too good for that. I mean, really? So that's what I think about the Medicaid expansion. Yes, ma'am.
Across this great state, how would Georgians, in your opinion, vote if they were given a vote on this question of whether to bring all of these federal dollars into our health care system in Georgia? All those counties struggling desperately to hang on to their local hospital, which is always a driver of the economy in these rural counties, and is the portal for people to get their health care, isn't it true? How do you think those counties, those Republican leaders in those rural counties would want us to vote? Would they want us to bring federal dollars into their health care system? Would they want us to cover all those uninsured people that have no insurance? Would they want to save their hospital? Have we been hearing that message, Senator?
I'm really glad you mentioned that. And you know what, Senator? We do not need to guess. Not only have they said that for 10 years, very loudly, but other states have put this up for referendum, and it has always passed overwhelmingly in red states. It just makes all the sense in the world, and what doesn't make sense is the obstruction that our state has put up in covering these folks who are working. I'm happy to yield for any more questions, or I'll yield the well.
Chair recognizes the majority whip to your left.
Good morning, Senator. Will
Good
you
morning. Yes, I yield.
Can you tell me you were talking a lot about that you don't want to cut taxes for hardworking Georgians, but can you tell me?
I don't think that's what I said.
Can you tell me on lines 19 through 25 how this would impact you? Does this impact you personally? because I don't think most people in this room file the short form.
I don't know.
And so I think it's going to help most of the poor people of Georgia, the lower class people of Georgia. It's going to give money back to that class of income bracket,
I mean,
correct?
you're partially correct. Because it's an increase in the standard deduction, it does help. It's still a broad swath of people. It's not just like the folks that really are struggling to get by, but it's not the rich people either.
But it's only for people who file a short form tax return.
Yes, but the vast majority of people do
Who are typically
that.
receiving a 10 or a W-2 form and not a 1099 form each year. Is that correct?
I believe, my understanding is, and you can tell me if I'm wrong, the vast majority of people take the standard deduction.
So, can you tell me where you live? Are you in,
Why is that relevant?
not the address, but what city or county is it?
I live in DeKalb County.
Okay,
I think
so
you know that.
where I'm from in North Georgia, people constantly ask me to not raise their taxes, but instead lower their taxes. Let them have their money back. They can make decisions that's best for how to raise their families if they can keep more of their hard-earned money. And I'm not talking about wealthy people. I'm talking about people making $50,000 to $100,000 a year on an annual basis. So I was just wondering if your constituents are sending you down here to raise their taxes, because most of the people I represent want me to do what we're doing here today.
So that's why I mentioned in my remarks that the smarter thing to do, and I think your constituents and my constituents would agree, if we want to give them this amount of money, we can, without losing hundreds of millions of dollars, jeopardizing that and flushing it down the toilet. And I'm certain that if your constituents understood the posture that we are in, that they would agree.
So we're not in a recession. Actually, our economy is growing. Our budget's the largest it's ever been in the history of our state. We have funds coming from D.C. you've already talked about. Why would we not want to give this money back to the people who sent it to us to be good stewards of their funds? This is not our money, it's their money.
Well, what I said was there's a much smarter way to do it. You can either do this and jeopardize hundreds of millions of dollars, or you could do it as a direct payment, have everyone still get the money and get the $140 million.
Okay. So
That sounds better to me.
So let me ask you another question about
Yes,
SB 293. Can you tell me why we voted to pass SB 293 just a little while ago? It was the first bill
Am
on
I
the floor.
allowed to talk about random other bills? Well, I mean,
You had an amendment on it, and I'm sitting here looking at it. Is that?
I don't know if that's
It was
permitted.
your bill.
I can talk about it. I just.
Would you mind
I
answering
thought we
that
had
question?
to speak on the bill that we were speaking on. I mean, I could talk to you offline about.
I would just. Is it not true that the bill 293 that you sponsored and the amendment you made is a tax cut for the people living in
No,
the city of Decatur?
that's not true.
It doesn't cut their taxes?
You're talking about that's the other one I had.
So
It's actually not. But I can talk to you
It's not
more
a
about
tax cut for the
Not
citizens?
under the current scheme, but I can talk to you.
Okay, that's
more
the way I
about
understood it to be. I'm sorry.
No, I'll fill you in.
All right, thank you
Yeah.
so much.
Thank you. I'm happy to answer any other questions, or I can.
Chair recognizes the senator from the 40th for a question.
Thank you, Mr. President. The senator from the 20th, when he presented this bill, very eloquently described it as a bill that will restore liberty and freedom to the people of Georgia. Is it not true that disabled people who are resourced with the funds to live in their community rather than being institutionalized or being stuck in their homes, that if they can receive these Medicaid waivers, that it will greatly increase their liberty and freedom, all 7,000 of them?
That's actually a really great point, Senator from the 40th, because what the other corollary of that is when people qualify for the waiver, then they are able to be productive members of society, which means then they pay more taxes. And without it, they sit at home.
Thank you. And do you further yield?
Yes, I do.
And isn't it true that when people have access to affordable health care, that it indeed also increases their liberty and their freedoms and make them more productive citizens of the state of Georgia?
I agree with you.
And isn't it true, do you further yield?
I yield.
And isn't it true that when we adequately fund public education from cradle to career, it produces Georgia citizens who are able to enjoy their liberties and freedoms and give back to this great state?
I agree with you, Senator. And also, it's just, you can't, the two things go together. You can't always say tax cuts are always the best. Well, they're not, because people get really mad when their schools don't function, and when we can't roll a vaccine out properly, and when there are potholes all over the roads. And guess what else doesn't happen? Businesses are less excited to come to your state and invest money. The government has to work in partnership with the private sector. The government has to provide services for its citizens, and therefore we must always balance all the interests, including what our tax rates are. So we can't pretend as though you can talk about a tax cut as there are no other things to take into consideration when you're doing it.
Thank you.
I'll yield.
You have no more questions.
Thank you, Mr. President. I yield the floor.
Chair recognizes the senator from the 27th to speak to the measure.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'll keep these comments brief. I know we have a long day today. But I heard a comment that, once again, didn't plan on speaking, but heard a comment that I felt deserved a response. And for the folks keeping score at home, you see something very simple here, as you often do in this chamber. You just see a difference in two worldviews. We all have the experience of people coming to us and telling us that they're running for office, and the first question, the only question I ever ask somebody when they come and tell me that they're running for office is, what is the role of government? Because I believe that their answer to that question will inform me with 98% accuracy or so how they will vote on an issue. And we heard a comment earlier today that perfectly describes the difference between the Republican worldview and the Democrat worldview over how you answer the question of what is the role of government. The senator said this morning that she was okay putting $60 or $100 into the pockets of Georgians. The supposition there, the assumption there, is that government owns the money. The government produces something, and the benefactors in this room, the angelic benefactors in this room, will descend from on high and decide whether they will put $60 or $100 or $150 or $200 into your pocket. Well, when I wake up and go to work tomorrow morning, it's not government that's setting my alarm clock. When I produce the widget that I'm going to produce tomorrow, government is nowhere to be found. I produce by the work of my hands, and millions of Georgians produce by the work of their hands, the fruit of their labor. And we have to get out of the business of taxing labor. You don't tax what you want more of. I think it's interesting as well to think about, how does the government derive what they get? Because we know they don't produce anything. Government gets what it gets because of its police power. That's the only way that government gets anything. It is literally under the threat of locking you in a cage if you do not give the benefactors in this building what they say they will take from your labor, that they get anything. I am offended at the notion that somebody in this building thinks that they are going to put something back in my pocket, because it was never theirs to begin with. Taking less is not putting something in your pocket. Taking less is not giving. It is simply taking less, but it is still taking. People are in the business of producing. Government is in the business of taking. And when it comes to our decisions and our worldviews, it will never be enough for Democrats. There's always some glorious government program out there. There's always some person suffering somewhere. There's always some idea that we can fund. There's always something that requires me to get up and go to work so the government can take my money so they can give it to somebody else. The fundamental purpose of government is very simple. It is to defend the rights of Americans. That is the fundamental right of government. It's in our founding documents. And I'm sorry, the senator from the 36th have something she'd like to say. I believe you can wait for your turn in the well. Thank you. The fundamental role of government is very simple. It is to defend the rights. Yes, we have to provide services. The senator from the 42nd was 100% correct. There will always be services to fund. There will always be glorious ideas, but we need to make sure that those are essential services, that those are services that fall within the role of government, and that we don't continue to allow government to creep into every area of our society from cradle to grave. It is not the government's role to usher my children from cradle to career. It is my job as their father to provide for them and usher them from cradle to career. So, Mr. President, I rise in support of this bill. I rise in support of any bill that allows us to exercise and protect the rights of Americans and Georgians in particular by allowing them to keep more of what they earn. And I rise in opposition to the continued efforts by those that believe in ever-growing government that produces nothing to continue to take money from hardworking Georgians to fund pet projects. And for the Senator from the 20th, I thank you for bringing this, and Mr. President, I yield the well.
Senator has yielded the well. The chair recognizes the senator from the 36th to speak to the measure.
Thank you, Mr. President. Well, colleagues, we just heard a very interesting point of view about the role of government. Our government is of the people, by the people, and for the people. And you know what? If you want to claim, Senator from the 27th, that you're representing the viewpoint of the Republican Party, that's certainly your right to do so. I will say that your view, the view of the senator that we just heard, that everything is done by the individual with no role in government, and it's all on the individual, and the individual should keep everything the individual has and not have any part in participating in a group effort to move forward as a state and as a nation. You know, when you go to work, when you go to school, when you go out of your home and you step onto a sidewalk and you step onto a street, you're taking advantage of, you're making use of what the government provides through collecting taxes, having a revenue stream to meet the needs of the citizenry. You don't get to your widget-making factory all on your own and alone. You got there with an education system that educates the people that work in your widget factory. You got an education somewhere. Most likely, since 90% of Georgia children are in public education, funded by public dollars, funded through the collective effort of taxing ourselves to provide the services that our people expect. This view of society that you get up and go build your widget and make your money, put it in your pocket, and hello, goodbye, get government out of my life, is actually nonsensical if you think about it for 2 minutes. And we've had this is a debate that's gone on before. It will continue. But I say if that's what you want to claim and you want to hang the Republican Party label on that point of view, you're certainly welcome to do it. I would dare say there are many in this state, Democrats, Republicans, and independents, who would take great issue with that. Great issue with, should we shut down public safety? Who pays for that public safety? Our taxes pay for that. And our constituents want it and appreciate it. You can build all the widgets over there in that imaginary factory of yours that you want to, but if you're not putting in a share of your earnings that you earn because you're in a society that is stable and moving forward and educating its population and tending to the needs of the sick and the poor, you have chaos and anarchy. It's a nonsensical view, and it's totally contrary to the viewpoint of our founding fathers in building this nation and putting a constitution in place and allowing for the powers of taxation so that we can put our money together. Now, you know, all these $60 coming in from this bill that we're debating right now, that coming into people's household budgets, that they don't pay out in a tax, I'll guarantee you, you ask any one of the families who have a child or an adult with profound disabilities that is eligible for community services, but not provided, not being able to access them because the state's not funding enough slots, enough waiver slots. You ask any of those families what they think about this widget tale that we've just been told up here in the well. No, they understand that programs need to be funded, that our populace has needs, and that a $60 tax refund is not going to provide that need. We have a hole in our education budget that is lamentable, to say the least. We have rural hospitals, and many of you, not me, but many of you represent rural areas with hospitals that are on life support. And quiet as it's kept, every one of those hospitals believes that we should put in a full-blown Medicaid program that's provided for in the Affordable Care Act. They understand that when they have people coming for emergency services with no insurance, that is a burden that hospitals cannot endlessly bear. That is why we have a Medicaid program. That is why we have a Medicare program. I suppose that point of view about building your widget and keeping your money to yourself and taking care of your family and who knows what's going to happen to the rest of the world, I suppose that point of view would lend you to turn a deaf ear to people with disabilities that need and deserve our attention and services that we have the money to provide. We have the money to provide. Don't ever fool ourselves that we have money. And you've heard a very eloquent and accurate exposition from the senator from the 42nd about the enormous amounts of money that are available in the COVID-19 relief plan that is coming from Washington. We should take advantage of it. We should utilize it fully. We should be smart instead of playing to some bumper sticker thing about we cut your taxes. You know, I've been down here a long time, and I have never yet seen a tax cut that you go home and everybody is throwing you a party about. It's in the minds up here that somehow people are celebrating that. No, they're looking for services. They want excellent public schools, strong public safety, good hospitals, a healthcare provider system that works for everybody, access to insurance, a livable wage, an ability to raise your children in a society that's moving forward and that the children are going to do better than you did. And they don't do that without the vital role of government. So this is an interesting debate, and I would say to you, if you take that widget tail far enough, you're against Medicaid. You're against Medicare. Why in the world should we do anything for these folks that have worked out their work life and have retired? Why should we be concerned with whether they have health coverage, whether they have pension, whether they have retirement, whether they have security in their old age? No, that's not our problem. We're building our widgets and raising our kids. You see, when you play this out, it's nonsensical and it's dangerous. And we ought to put a stop to that kind of narrative that is such a distortion of what this great nation and this great state is all about. I yield the well.
Chair recognizes the senator from the 20th to close debate.
Mr. President, I was not expecting this to be a partisan battle this morning. This ought to be a bipartisan measure. It passed the House 171-0. This helps lower and middle income families. It leaves more money in their pocket that they've worked really hard for. The senator from the 27th, he picked up on what I did. We're not giving them money. We're letting them keep some of the money they busted their rear end to earn. Got up early and worked late. Frankly, I'm offended by some of the remarks made by my friends across the aisle. I'm not a hyper-partisan person. I'm not an ideologue. They know I care about the disabled. They know I care about people that have not had the advantages I've had. That's what this bill's about. It's helping people that are trying to move up and work hard and provide for their family. Since I've been here, we have done a tremendous amount to help rural hospitals. I have 2 rural hospitals in my district that struggle. I have fought hard to help them, and they have been able to turn the corner lately and are doing better. We have increased the reimbursement, Medicaid reimbursement for OBGYN services. That's helped our rural hospitals. Last year, we extended the coverage for pregnant mothers, the length of time they're covered, and their child that are on Medicaid. Every year that I've been here, we've increased funding for now and comp waivers every year, and I've advocated for it every year. We put a lot of money into broadband, and we passed legislation to allow our EMCs to get into the broadband business, and we've seen some tremendous announcements lately, and I think we're going to put more money in it in the future, and it's going to grow and help rural Georgia. I'm for that. Y'all know I'm for that. I am just really shocked that my colleagues across the aisle have gotten up here and basically said we're for bigger government and higher taxes. That's essentially what they've said, and I think that's been made very clear. Regarding the American Rescue Plan, which you know is going to basically be a debt that our grandchildren will be paying off. But regarding the American Rescue Plan, the Treasury Department came out with a statement yesterday. They said states are allowed and can cut taxes without penalty under this program as long as we offset those cuts with other funds within our budget. So this is not going to cost the state money from the feds. The choice is very clear. A green vote on this bill is a vote in support of hardworking families in Georgia. A red vote's for bigger government, higher taxes, and taking money out of the pockets of your constituents. Vote your conscience. I yield the well.
Senator has yielded the well. Is there objection agreeing to the report of the committee which is favorable to the passage of the bill? The chair hears none. The report of the committee is agreed to. Is there objection to the main question being ordered? Chair hears none, and the main question is ordered. The question's on the passage of the bill. All those in favor vote yea, opposed nay. The secretary will unlock the machine. Have all senators voted? All right, there's a couple more coming. I'll give it another minute. Have all senators voted? Hallway clear? There's one more. Or is that a thumbs up? I'm losing my eyesight. Yeah, that's right. All right, Mr. Secretary, please close the machine. On the passage of the bill, the yeas are 35, the nays are 15. This bill, having received the requisite constitutional majority, is therefore passed. What purpose does the senator from the 20th rise?
Mr. President, I move the Senate immediately transmit House Bill 593 to the House.
Senator from the 20th has moved that the Senate immediately transmit House Bill 593 to the House. Is there objection? Chair hears none, and it is immediately transmitted. Mr. Secretary, can you please read the caption of House Bill 114?
House Bill 114 by Representative Reeves of the 34th and others. Bill to be entitled an act to amend Article 2, Chapter 7 of Title 48, the official code of Georgia annotated, relating to imposition, rate, computation, and exemptions from state income taxes so as to revise the tax credit for adoption of foster children and for other purposes. Mr. President, the Senate Committee on Finance recommends that this bill do pass. Respectfully submitted, Senator Huffstetler, the 52nd District Chair. That completes the order, Mr. President.
Mr. Secretary, Chair recognizes the senator from the 50th to present House Bill 114.
Thank you, Mr. President. To me, it is an honor to carry this bill, House Bill 114. This is a governor's bill and is a part of his adoption reform policy. The current tax credit for adoption is $2,000 per year until the child turns 18. This bill will increase the amount to $6,000 per year for the first 5 years, and then returns to $2,000 until the child turns 18. The purpose of this bill is to incentivize foster child adoptions because cost associated with raising a child from the foster care system is oftentimes more expensive. This bill saves the state money. At the same time, this bill offers much needed support to those families who open their hearts and their homes to children. I applaud the governor and I applaud the First Lady for their fervor in fighting human trafficking and bettering the foster care system. As most of you may know, victims of human trafficking are disproportionately children who were in the foster care system who were never adopted out. Now, this bill will not solve all those problems. This bill will not save all those children, but it will make a difference. And it's an honor to bring this bill because of my family's story as well. I have 2 adopted siblings. My mother worked for years helping families adopt children. And I would be remiss if I didn't share a story that she oftentimes told when asked why she cared so much about these children. And the story goes like this. There was a big storm on a beach somewhere, and the tide came in, and there was for whatever reason, for the season, there were a large number of starfish. And these starfish ended up on the beach. And the tide went back out, and the sun came out, and there's just thousands of these starfish on the beach. And there's one kid that noticed it, and he's walking up and down the beach, and he's picking up these starfish, and he's throwing them in the ocean. And there's no way he's going to be able to save all of them. And this man comes up to him and goes, "Kid, what are you doing? There's no way you're going to be able to save all these fish." And he picks one up, and he throws it in the ocean. He looks at the old man and he said, "No, but I saved that one." And so this bill, those starfish represent the foster children in this state, and they are oftentimes forgotten, they are oftentimes overlooked, but there are still people fighting for them. Our governor's one of them, our first ladies is one of those people. This bill passed unanimously in the House, and this bill can pass unanimously here. And I ask for your support in this bill so that we can make a difference for those children that are oftentimes forgotten. And with that, if there are no questions, I will yield the will.
You have no questions.
Thank you.
Does any other senator wish to speak for or against House Bill 114? The chair sees none. Is there objection to agreeing to the report of the committee which is favorable to the passage of the bill? The chair hears none. The report of the committee is agreed to. Is there objection to the main question being ordered? Chair hears none and the main question is ordered. Questions on the passage of the bill. All those in favor vote yea. Opposed nay. The secretary will unlock the machine. Have all senators voted? Mr. Secretary, please close the machine. On the passage of the bill, the yeas are 53, the nays are 0. This bill, having received the requisite constitutional majority, is therefore passed. Great work. Great work. What purpose does the senator from the 50th rise?
Mr. President, I move that the Senate immediately transmit House Bill 114 to the House.
The senator from the 50th says move that this body transmit House Bill 114 to the House. Is there objection? The chair hears none, and it is immediately transmitted. Mr. Secretary, can you please read the caption of House Bill 336?
House Bill 336 by Representative Corbett of the 174th and others. The bill to be entitled an Act to amend Chapter 23 of Title II of the OCGA relating to hemp farming so as to provide for compliance with federal laws and regulations, to provide for history reports, to provide for disposal of lots of hemp and for other purposes. Mr. President, the Senate Committee on Agriculture and Consumer Affairs recommends that this bill do pass by substitute. Respectfully submitted, Senator Walker of the 20th District Chair. Mr. President, the Senate Committee on Agriculture and Consumer Affairs offers the following substitute to House Bill 336. The bill to be entitled an Act to amend Chapter 23 of Title II of the OCGA relating to hemp farming so as to provide for compliance with federal laws and regulations, to revise the definition, to provide for history reports, to provide for surety bonds and breach investigation of same, to provide for disposal of lots of hemp, to provide for sampling and random testing of hemp, and for other purposes. That completes the order, Mr. President.
Chair recognizes the senator from the 53rd to present House Bill 336. I hope you caught your breath since running up the stairs this morning.
Thank you, Mr. President. Now, ladies and gentlemen, this isn't an emotional bill. This isn't a tax bill. This isn't a bill about major policy, but it is still an important bill. And I'd like to thank a lot of people who inspired me with this. The senator from the 51st who inspired the senator from the 20th earlier, the senator from the 7th, senator from... Thank you, Mr. President. It's such an important bill. Senator from the 20th, the senator from, I don't know, all of y'all. I'm just inspired today. I want to thank you for that. I even had help with this bill, which has nothing to do with the name, but former Senator Doug Stoner. Now, this bill is about Georgia Hemp Farming Act and nothing to do with that name that would imply another kind of herb. So, but this bill is defining the hemp vegetation. You can't eat it, but it is a vegetation
the hemp plant, and the other farming agricultural plants. So when you're talking about the processing, that is what we're talking about. And you've heard this before, but I'm going to do it again. The dying and the crying, the shucking and the trucking, the bucking and the clucking, the storing and the snoring, and the trimming and the swimming, and the carrying and the staring. That's what we're talking about, the processing. It's different from the senator from the 24th and what he does in his farm, but we're just making sure that the definition of processing is different from the other agricultural plants. I'll be happy to answer any questions, Mr. President, or I'd yield the well and ask for your vote.
You did such a great job, you have no questions.
I'll try harder next time. Thank you.
Does any other senator wish to speak for or against House Bill 336 or follow that performance? Chair sees none. The question is on the adoption of the committee substitute. Is there objection to adoption of the committee substitute? Chair hears none, and the committee substitute is adopted. Is there objection to agreeing to the report of the committee, which is favorable to the passage of the bill? The chair hears none. The report of the committee is agreed to. Is there objection to the main question being ordered? Chair hears none. The main question is ordered. The question is on the passage of the bill by substitute. All those in favor vote yea. Opposed, nay. The secretary will unlock the machine. Have all senators voted? Have all senators voted? Mr. Secretary, please close the machine. On the passage of the bill, the yeas are 45, the nays are 7. This bill, having received the requisite constitutional majority, is therefore passed by substitute. Chair recognizes the majority leader for a motion.
Mr. President, I move that we table the rest of the rules calendar.
The majority leader has moved that the remainder of the rules calendar is placed on the table. Is there objection? The chair hears none, and the bills are placed on the table. What purpose does the senator from the 26th rise?
Parliamentary inquiry, Mr.
State
President.
your inquiry.
Are we tabling because they are not acting on Senate bills or what?
We'll get back to you in 2 minutes. Chair recognizes the majority leader for a motion.
Mr. President, I move that the Senate stand adjourned until 1 o'clock on Monday, 22 March 2021.
Mr. Secretary, please read your announcements.
Mr. President, the Senate Committee on Rules will meet upon adjournment in 450 the Capitol. Insurance and Labor will meet in 450 the Capitol at 1 p.m. Public Safety will meet at 1 p.m. in Mezzanine 1. Transportation will meet at 2:15 in 450 of the Capitol. Agriculture and Consumer Affairs is canceled. Regulated Industries and Utilities will meet at 3:30 and 450 of the Capitol. And Government Oversight is canceled. That completes the order, Mr. President. There are no committee meetings tomorrow. That completes the order, Mr.
Chair
President.
wants to make a quick announcement and remind everybody that next week that will be Cattleman's Day here at the Capitol on Monday, March 22nd. And for anybody who's been here in the past, you do not want to miss one of their awesome steak biscuits on Monday. So just want to make that quick reminder. Chair recognizes the senator from the 36th for an announcement.
Thank you, Mr. President. Colleagues, you're welcome to join the Working Families lunch. Come by and pick up your lunch in 310 LOB, and then follow on Zoom the presentation for today, which is sponsored by the North Georgia Labor Council, and we'll be taking a look at tax credits, tax cuts, and the federal American Rescue Plan. Hope to see you there, and have a great weekend.
Chair recognizes the Appropriations Chairman for an announcement.
Thank you, Senators. Thank you for your work on the Senate Appropriations Subcommittee so far. We're anticipating that we will have an appropriations meeting Monday at 10:30 a.m. in the Appropriations Room, room 341. Please just check your emails, and I expect that notice will go out shortly as soon as we can work through a few more things. Thank you, Mr. President.
Chair recognizes the senator from the 24th for an announcement.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'm apologize for coming this late with this, but we got notified yesterday that one of our members across the aisle in the House, his brother passed away. Dr. Martin Newton's brother passed away of a massive heart attack, and I just asked for a moment of silence prayer.
Senators ask for us to rise in a moment of silence.
Thank you.
Chair recognizes the Rules Chairman for an announcement.
Thank you, Mr. President. I just want to announce we have no rules meeting today. Thank you.
The Majority Leader has moved that this Senate stand adjourned until Monday, March 22nd, 2021 at 1 p.m. All those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye. Opposed, no. And the ayes actually have it. And the Senate stands adjourned.